welcome back. The Bronx Rising Initiative is an organization dedicated to providing and distributing critical resources across the Bronx in response to the COVID-19 pandemic's disproportionate impact. The organization works to create access to healthcare, alleviate hunger, invest in the growth of small businesses, and inspire youth to better themselves and their borough. To support the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the initiative secured over $3 million in funding for Bronx-based medical organizations. Joining us now to provide their point of view on the matter, I'm joined by the Chief Operating Officer at the Bronx Rising Initiative, Jason Autar. And Jason, good to have you.
Daren, thank you for having us come out here and talk about all the great work that we've been doing so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pivotal time. And when you talk about this pandemic, literally, nobody saw it coming, but yet and still people had to be prepared and make the pivot. For your organization, you really tried to grab the bull by the horns and be able to tackle some real issues.
Yeah, when the pandemic initially started, our founder, executive director, Tomas Ramos, he kind of foresaw that the Bronx was going to be the epicenter of the epicenter. And so what he did was he just galvanized resources from his network there. And so we secured funding from private donors, anonymous donors, who were interested in helping the Bronx. And so what we were able to do was increase ICU bed capacity here in the borough by 33% by partnering with St. Barnabas Hospital, Bronx Lebanon Hospital, providing PPE, but also beyond that, giving critical resources by ensuring that there were beds, that there were ventilators, and that there were resources here for the Bronx once the pandemic and hospitalizations began to increase. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about really being the epicenter of the epicenter, the borough of the Bronx. And when we saw these numbers continue to rise across New York City, we saw how the Bronx was seeing more and more people. We talked to Assemblywoman Karina Reyes, and she was also a nurse, and she told us that 95% of the beds were being occupied at one point by COVID patients, and almost 90% of those people are on ventilators. It was really bad.
Yeah, and to that effect, Tomas Ramos, he saw that, coming down the pipeline. When you have a high concentration of individuals in high concentration area of poverty, you're going to get these effects because we don't, unfortunately, have the resources, particularly in the South Bronx, that we need. And so we galvanize those resources to bring them right to the people when they needed it the most.
Yeah. And so in addition to bed capacity, I know there's a lot of other work that's been doing PPE supplies. People take that for granted, but share with us what has been your experience in making have proper PPE.
Right. So, going back to last year at this time, starting actually in March and April, obviously there weren't a lot of PPE to go around. And so, having to wait for PPE for our essential workers, that was tough. So we found it upon ourselves to go out to actual vendors who were selling this on the market and purchasing those, and then donating it to the most neediest individuals, and that being our frontline staff workers, especially in the hospital settings, because they were the ones not being afforded this PPE just because the federal government did not properly prepare for this pandemic, and so there was a mad dash. And so once we saw that, we understood that this was a stopgap and that we needed to fill the service, and we did it.
Yeah. I want to move now from PPE to where we are today. I mean, let's talk a little bit about where we are today. We're pretty much on the other side, safely, we can say, of this pandemic. And as we're on the other side of the pandemic, there's still some work to be done, getting people vaccinated. Bronx Rising Initiative has literally risen their voice and literally their resources towards getting people information and awareness. Share with us a little bit about your awareness campaign and how you're trying to get people aware and vaccinated.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. We started after the PPE distribution and a couple of other initiatives, our donor base, and plus, us as an executive team, we understood that vaccinations were going to be the second part of it. And so as we tackled that, we understood that we needed to meet people where they were. And so what we did was we partnered with Morris Heights Health Center, which is a clinic here in the Bronx. They have multiple locations scattered throughout the borough. And so what we did was through our donor base and just through regular fundraising, we were able to raise a little bit over $2 million to fiscally sponsor the entire operations for vaccinations for Morris Heights. And so as the conversation continued, we understood that there were Bronxites that did not have the resources or the capacity to travel very far. So then that's when we tapped into our network of community partners. And through our community partners, we were able to set up mobile vaccination tours, mostly through NYCHA developments and through other community spaces as well throughout the Bronx. So as we did that, we understood that we had to, again, meet people where they were. And so that's actually knocking on doors and signing people up, registering them so that they can come right downstairs, get vaccinated in their own community spaces, and not have to worry about traveling long distances, not having to worry about, the hardships of where am I going to find, $5 or $6 to get on the bus or the train in order to get to the large mega sites. And while the mega sites are important, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? So while the mega sites are there, we have our mini sites. Our mini sites are able to provide the resources in the community, in community spaces, and have a joint venture with our community partners to also bring up their withstanding in the neighborhood. And so a multi-pronged approach, right? There's a lot of moving parts to that. And so at the forefront of that is our outreach team going and actually knocking on doors, signing people up, and really educating them at the doors as well. Initially, we saw that there was some vaccine hesitancy, but once people saw that their neighbors were getting vaccinated, when they saw the actual staff of Bronx Rising Initiative being vaccinated, that really increased their awareness, but it also increased their ability to say, hey, you know what? If there are folk in my neighborhood that are getting the vaccine and nothing is happening to them, then that really means that there's efficacy involved in here. And there's also the ability for me to also get this vaccine at the most critical juncture. And so that's what we've been able to do from January until now. And that work is going to continue to go because, only 37% of the borough has been fully vaccinated. And out of that, only 29% has at least had one shot. So we know that there's still a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of stop gaps that we need to fill. The outreach team is our bread and butter, actually knocking on doors and making sure that people understand that, we are not out of the woods yet, that there's still some work to be done or a lot of work to be done, and that we really have to double down our efforts and make sure that this word and this information is getting out there. And so we've been seeing a lot of younger folk, particularly from the ages of 18 to 44, who are not being vaccinated for whatever reason. And so that's the population that we are trying to really galvanize toward and really hit across. Because the older population from, let's say, 54 all the way to 85 and up, their efficacy rates and their rates of being vaccinated are much higher than the 18 to 44.
So when you're going door to door, obviously you're meeting people and these conversations are being had. What are you getting? I know you got some people who say, listen, I'm going to get vaccinated, but talk to us about that hesitancy, because it's very real. In communities of color, we know that the hesitancy and the stigmas are still there and they're still prevalent. And then also, we'll share a little bit about Johnson & Johnson, because once the Johnson & Johnson pause came out, from what I heard, there was a pause even in people saying, I don't know if I want to do this right now.
Yeah, definitely. The Johnson & Johnson kind of set us back for a little bit. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But, definitely in regards to the actual conversations that we are having at folks' door, it takes time, right? And it takes effort to actually stand there for, 5, 10, 15 minutes and have these conversations. But these are much needed conversations. And, a lot of our outreach workers, they are from our communities, so they look like us and they do represent us. And so their ability to relay this information is really critical. And so, using anecdotes is important because, and getting a lot of this message through word of mouth is important. And so once neighbors see us spending the time and actually educating folk and letting them know that there's a high efficacy rate involved in these vaccines, it really gets to them. And it really makes them understand the importance of this. Obviously, folk are free to choose what they do. And so a lot of what we've been hearing is, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait because we don't know the long-term side effects. We don't know enough about the vaccine, and we just don't know. And so you have to respect a person's right to choose and their option to choose what goes into their body. But I think with us and our increased visibility and our ability to really double back and our ability to just be patient and work with folk and really answer those hard to need questions. And we tell them, listen, we're not medical professionals, but we've been working in this space for quite some time. So we do understand and we do come across these questions often. So that has really prepared us. I think in the beginning, our outreach team, myself included, we weren't apt to really answering a lot of those technical questions, but working with Morris Heights, hearing a lot about what they have to say and their informationals to us has really, really prepared us for where we are in this juncture. Just to touch back to the Johnson and Johnson, it did set us back. At some of our clinics, or pop-up clinics rather, we were having really great numbers, 150, 200. And then right after, we actually had one particular clinic, we were slated to have X amount of folk, and we only had 70 show up that particular day. But these things happen, right? It's science. Science is not 100% accurate all the time. It can offer us alternatives and it can offer us solutions, but definitely knowing and understanding that these things do happen, and then relaying that to our communities as well. And I think, again, taking the time out and really, presenting these ideas to people, I think for the most part, they get it. Like I said, a lot of the older population, they definitely understand it. And, just the other day, knocking on someone's door, someone actually said, I want a Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which was good to hear because it shows that in spite of everything else, that they still want to get vaccinated, right? And that's the most important thing. I think the president said it best. It doesn't matter what vaccine you have in front of you. That is the one that you ought to take or should take because of the resource that's been given. And so with that, that is also the approach that we are telling folk. However, folk have the right and the option to choose. And so primarily we've been working with the Moderna for our pop-up clinics. So that has helped. I know you touched on and we'll touch on it later, our Homebound program and how that kind of affected us with the Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, I'm coming into that right now because when you talk about seniors, you talk about the fact that they're homebound. A lot of seniors were saying, listen, I want to get the Johnson & Johnson because I get that one shot and I'll be able to be done. But we know that when Johnson & Johnson had their pause, there was a great pause. So give me a little bit about being able to reach that senior population and what we're hearing from them, particularly when that Johnson & Johnson pause came out.
Yeah, even in spite of that, our seniors still wanted to get vaccinated, right? Especially for the Homebound program. Just a little bit about the Homebound program. We've partnered with VIP Community Services, which is another clinic here in the Bronx that's been just a stalwart, just been doing great work over the last 30 plus years. And so we've partnered with them in order to do the Homebound program. The Homebound program was put on pause because the Johnson & Johnson was slated for the Homebound program. And so when the pause was initially occurred, we had to logistically figure out how were we going to administer these shots. So we had to put a pause on even our programming. And so that affected us and it set us back a few weeks as well. Eventually we got word that we can use the Moderna. And so we've restarted as of this week, vaccinating folk. And, overwhelming majority as we're, making our phone calls, making our appointments, folk have been asking for the Moderna. So they're hesitancy with the Johnson & Johnson. And so we've had to go back and now do, this logistically in terms of the Moderna doing the Homebound program. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but at the same point in time, shots in the arm, jabs in the arm, that's what's most important in inoculating the most vulnerable population, seniors who are homebound. And so that's what we're going to continue to do because that's the most important thing, regardless if they don't want Johnson & Johnson.
Are there any, I'm sorry to cut you, are there any particular things that we're hearing from seniors that you might be able to relate to us as you go from door to door?
Again, what we've heard from them is, we've survived this long, we'd rather wait with something, that being the Moderna, and taking our chance with that rather than having the Johnson & Johnson and not know what's wrong with us. And, we'll relay the information to them and the statistics just in terms of how effective the Johnson & Johnson is. But again, you have to respect people's opinions and you have to respect what they want to put into their bodies and their choices. So we're respectful of that. And, vaccines, it seems, things are opening up a lot more and there are different access points. And so with more information, folk have that choice and they should be obligated to their choices.
Yeah. Creating opportunities is something that the Bronx Rising Initiative continues to do. Talk to us a little bit about the Brandon Hendricks Scholarship.
Yeah, so Brandon Hendricks was just a magnificent young man. He was actually a participant at the Bronx River Community Center when Tomas Ramos, our AD and founder of Bronx Rising Initiative, was the director there, and so he knew Brandon Hendricks pretty well. And so last year, Brandon Hendricks unfortunately was gunned down by just a senseless, gun crime, and he had a full pledged scholarship to go play at St. John's University. He was a gifted basketball player. He was well known in the community, well loved. And so, in honor of his life and his legacy, and just who he was, we have from there on started the Brandon Hendricks Scholarship Foundation. And that started last year, where we awarded 5 young people, awards of $5,000 who are, went into college for the first time last year, who were freshmen, obviously. And so we're going to continue to uphold Brandon's name and legacy. And so this year we're also doing the same thing. This year we are expanding it to 10 winners for $5,000 apiece. So as you can see, the fundraising and just who Brandon was, it continues to live because we've been able to expand now from 5 last year to now 10 winners this year.
So for people who want to find out more about what you guys are doing and how they can actually take part, how can the public play a part in the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find us on our website, www.bronxrisinginitiative.org. You can also follow us on social media. We have links on our page to our social media. And you can actually sign up for the Homebound program on our page. We have a Survey Monkey there, and you can also apply for our Brandon Hendricks scholarship as well there. Applications were open on May 3rd. We're going to choose a winner on July 7th at a community event. So all young people across the borough, please feel free to put your name in there. It has all of the information of what we're looking for in the Scholarship Foundation. And so just a little bit more about the scholarship. It's multiple people that are involved in it. So it's our organization, obviously, but Brandon's parents and family are involved, as well as his former coaches. So we're making it an entire community event on July 7th, not just to celebrate him, but also to celebrate the young people who are taking part in this initiative and really, furthering the borough, and really the pride of our borough is our young people. So we want to make that a staple moving forward. And we also want young people to understand that here is a resource, it's a Bronx resource that you can tap into as long as you live in the borough.
All right. Jason, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much for coming and being with us here on the Social Justice Forums, where we had an opportunity to talk about a variety of different things. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you so much, Daren. Really appreciate you, and I look forward to coming back again soon.
Absolutely. All righty. Once you listen, stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. Got more on the Social Justice Forums. We'll return coming up right after this.